Hello everyone, I'll be showing you how to write the formulas for molecular compounds for these three compounds, diarsenic pentafluoride, carbon tetrafluoride, and sulfur dioxide. So when I try to break down and write the chemical formula for the compounds is I try to isolate the prefix on each of these elements. For arsenic, it's di right here, and for fluoride, it's penta right here. With this Greek table that I wrote on the side of the periodic table over here, there's a 1 through 10 table from mono to deca that represents each number. So di being 2 and penta for here being 5. So just for a note, I'm going to write 2 and 5 here. And then after you're done writing the prefix and how many of these atoms there are, then you have to start writing it. And so for arsenic, to start writing, you have to look on the periodic table and find arsenic here and see that As is the chemical formula for arsenic. So I'm going to start with As, since it's first in the compound, and then with the subscript, which is the little number at that would be written here. So for As, if I write it here for an example, the subscript is the number that goes here, telling us how many of the certain element or compound to the left of it there are. So for arsenic, it means there's 2 arsenic elements, as it states here. So I'm going to put 2 for the subscript for arsenic right there. And then moving on to pentafluoride, I can do the same thing. I find fluoride, or since it's in standard form, for fluoride it'd just be F and fluorine. But for the compound, it's changed to fluoride because it's a compound and not an individual element. So then we write F. And the same thing for di with arsenic, it's penta for fluoride, and penta representing 5. We can put a 5 for the subscript right here. And that is your written chemical formula for this compound. Moving on, we have carbon tetrafluoride. Starting off the same thing we did with this one, we have to isolate the prefixes. With carbon, there is no prefix. So I'm going to put a line at the start of carbon saying that if there was a prefix, it would have gone here. In tetrafluoride, we can cut off the tetra because you see on the table right here, tetra means 4. So we're going to put 4 at the top, just for a note. Going back to this one, when there's nothing there, it means there's 1 of something, just as if it was X. You don't write 1X because there is just 1X. And since there is only 1 here, mono is the 1. So technically, you could write monocarbon, but it would mean the same thing. So we don't typically. So I can just put a 1 up there. And then we can start writing. Carbon, found here, C, so I can start with C. And since it's just 1, we still don't do the same thing for the subscript because it would mean the same thing without it. So typically we don't put it there. So that's the C represents this. And then the fluoride, we can go back to the same one for F. So you can write CF. And since there's 4 of them, with the tetra prefix in the Greek table over here, we can write 4 in the subscript, meaning there's just 4 of the fluorine, not 4 of the carbon. And we keep these capitalized to show that they're individual elements. Because if I didn't, and let's say I wrote up here capital A, capital S, it wouldn't mean arsenic. It would mean something completely different that I don't even believe is on the periodic table. So either way, CF4 is the proper way to write the broken down chemical formula for this compound. Since there's no subscript for the carbon, since there's just one, and there's a 4 representing tetra on the 1 through 10 table for fluoride. And our last one down here, sulfur dioxide. So the same thing with the carbon up here. There is no prefix, so I'm going to put a line at the start saying that if there was a prefix, I would put it here. And dioxide. Di is the prefix for 2, as said here. So I can cut that off from oxide. Oxide being oxygen when it's in a compound form. It means the same thing as oxygen, it just means that there's typically more of them. So, with the same thing for sulfur as I could put for carbon, there's 1, since there is no prefix. So, you could write mono sulfur, but again, it would mean the same thing, so typically we don't put it. So 1. And dioxide, meaning 2, as said before, and on the table over here, so we can put a 2 up there to start off, so we know all of the things that can be put into writing the chemical formula before we start writing. I've always found that to be helpful and to just know what you're doing a lot easier. So for sulfur, found right here, it's just S. So I can start with S. And again, with the subscript being 1, it would mean the same thing, so we don't put it there. But if it was, let's say, trisulfur, then this would be a 3, since the tri represents the 3 on the table, and you would have to put a 3 in the subscript. But it's just a 1, so we're going to have to leave it out. And then dioxide, the oxide is representing the oxygen in its standard individual format. So you can put O for oxide, and then since there's 2 of them from the di prefix right here, we can put a 2 after the O, saying that there's 2 oxygen atoms and 1 sulfur atom. And then SO2